our annual gathering of our Cornerstone Society with our scholar in residence. We are very pleased today to welcome special guests, but for now, we want to say welcome to all of you. Here with us to celebrate in this Kaplan Scholar in Residence weekend are, in fact, the Kaplans. Arnie and Dee Kaplan are here, and they each year are sponsoring our annual Scholar in Residence program. And we're very grateful, and to Charles Peck family for being a co-sponsor. And but tonight is really a chance to say thank you to all of you. We're going to have some social time together as a big group, and also a little bit of breakout. And then we're going to have some time with our scholar who has prepared a special presentation just for us this evening, just for the Cornerstone. So you don't, if you come on Friday night to the services on the live stream, or Saturday morning via Zoom, although Rabbi Shevin, are we going to live stream it as well for those who might have trouble?
Both this weekend, yeah, tomorrow night and Saturday, but not tonight.
It will not be repetitious. Tonight's program, he's given us a little bit, is going to be special just for you tonight. So let us begin with, I don't have him in front of me. Oh, there he is. I'm going to spotlight Michael Richker with a special spotlight. There he is. And if you could please unmute Michael. Oh, we just lost Joan. She stepped away for your spotlight moment. But we need Joan back to help you unmute. Man.
Yeah, okay. It was a big sign in the middle that said unmute. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the Cornerstone Society. Welcome to the Cornerstone Society members. Before I start, I'd like to take a moment of silence in memory of Renee Gold. And so I'm going to bow my head and close my eyes and think of all the wonderful things she has done for all of us. Thank you. And Joan reminded me it's Renee's birthday. And the reason I wanted to mention Renee was because Renee and I started the Cornerstone Society back in 2007 with just 4 members. Today, through your generosity, it has grown to 103 members. And collectively, we pay, our dues represent 30% of the entire temple's budget. And many of you give additionally. There's some of you who you know who you are, who give very generously throughout the year to all of us. And I just want to know, I remember when Rabbi Glickman had that wonderful idea to save our high holidays and our year, that out of the money we raised, 80% of it came from Cornerstone members. So the giving goes on and on. You are truly the cornerstone of our temple, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
And thank you, Michael Richker. And thank you for remembering Renee. That was really important. And this is, our first gathering without her. And I'm so glad you did. I want to put on the spotlight the chairs of our Kaplan Scholar in Residence weekend. Oh, but Rabbi Shefrin just did. Wendy and Larry Barnett. Thank you so much for bringing us our wonderful scholar again this year, and thank you for your community. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
All right. So we are going to now I want to give you just every time we meet with the Cornerstone side, we always like to give a little bit of insight of what's going on at the temple, and then we're going to do a little bit of socializing in a breakout room, and then we're going to have our feature program with our scholar. So let's just share a little bit of news. And I saw earlier our temple president, Barry Gerber, is here. And many other board members and temple leaders. So here's just a little insight of some news. It looks like the Newmans are at least on my screen, are spotlit. There we go. Now I don't know why that happened, but you got me now. We had a big board meeting this past Monday, and I'm pleased to announce that after tremendous deliberation, it was decided to reopen our preschool. We discovered that we were the only preschool in the area that had closed for COVID-19. And through very careful measures and with a lot of research and a tremendous subcommittee of board members brought finally, after several months of deliberation, and the preschool will be reopening first in a summer camp and then really with the fall. The other news at the temple, we sent an email to everyone. We have no much further updates on this, but about the vandalism at our cemetery. There are a few people have asked some questions, so we'll give a little bit more detail. The vandal had etched, like with a knife or keys or something, onto the granite columbaria. The one tall columbarium that houses the ashes, the cremains, and that was, as I think was described in the email, a swastika and Nazi words that which by now have probably been buffed out, or maybe they will be tomorrow. They weren't etched deeply, they weren't deeply noticeable, so that when they were discovered yesterday morning, we couldn't even say for sure how long they had been there. But maybe they were done, yesterday morning. We just don't know. But the sheriff's office, they'd come and, they checked the crime scene and so forth. But it should all be, but before any one of our members is out there, it will not be noticed. It will be buffed out. And the third bit of news we wanted to share with everyone is about Barbara Mazer, who is the cantorial soloist that we have been introducing. She's led 3 services with us and has been tremendously popular, really across the board. And with the approval of our ritual committee, which just met, she is going to be part of the rotation with Dan Cartledge and Cynthia Roberts Green. You should be seeing Barbara Mazer about every 3rd or 4th week through the rest of the pandemic while we are broadcasting services remotely. And so we're excited about that. Barbara Mazer is a longtime singer and musician and song leader, and has been leading services for 20 years, but always as a side job. She's primarily a fundraiser and was hired by our own Jewish Federation just about 2 months ago to be in charge of the capital campaign of the new campus renovation at the Federation. She lives in St. Pete, but she's in Sarasota often. Although at this moment, it doesn't matter where she lives, she can live on Mars. Well, actually, maybe not Mars, where there's like an 8-minute delay, in broadcast. But so maybe not Mars, but she could live anywhere because we're all broadcasting from our various places. Let's see, that's for the news, other than we're doing a lot of planning Purim, you're going to be getting another holiday gift bag. It's become our temple tradition. If there's a holiday, you get a gift bag. But of course, you should definitely on Purim, which is the holiday to get gift bags. That used to be only on Purim we would give out gift bags. We've been doing it every holiday now, but back to Purim, you'll get a gift bag. And we're starting to get ready for Passover as well. And don't ask about high holidays. We don't know yet. We're still waiting to see how many of our temple can get a vaccine and then what that's going to be like. So we don't know yet about the high holidays, but we're really worried about Purim and Passover right now. We're not worried about high holidays yet. So that's some of the news of the temple. If there are any questions or additions about some of the temple news, we could open up the floor. I don't see any hands up currently. All right, so what we thought we'd do is this would just be the cocktail hour. We're going to introduce our speaker in about 7 minutes. We'll introduce Rabbi Feinstein. But for now, what we're going to do is a breakout room. Let's see, how about maybe 5 to 6 per room. We're going to go to breakout rooms now so that you can say hi to other Cornerstone members for about 5 or 6 minutes of socializing and saying hello. And then we'll come back to the big room to give a message from our amazing scholar.
Just hit accept when you get the invite to your breakout rooms. Enjoy, friends. We'll see you there momentarily.
All right. Did you open up breakout rooms? Because I think I did too. So hopefully it'll work. All right.
Well, hello, Brenner. Marty!
Hello. Well, Marty, you're
Marty.
muted. And you might be able to chat with Rabbi. Marty, will you go to a breakout room and then you can.
I don't function well with these multiple things. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, but the breakout room actually makes it easier for you to talk with other people. I really recommend giving it a try.
Well, all right, I'll give it a try.
Because it's like this, you only be with 5 other people.
Okay, I understand.
So it makes it more sociable. I'll join your room too, so
okay,
we'll have each other.
I'll tap to join.
Okay.
Okay.
Did it work?
What
No.
room?
I followed the instructions. It said
All right.
tap to join.
I'm going to try again.
That's all right.
Oh, there he is. iPod Marty.
I just tried him again to room 2.
Room 2 now. Okay.
There you
All
go.
right. I'll go to room 2 because I told him I would. All right.
Yeah. Go give that man some love. Rabbi, if you're listening, I'm going to go visit a room for a minute, and I'll see you shortly.
Hi, Betty. Hi, Gloria and Bill.
Hi, Michael and Joan.
Joan.
Hi,
Always good to see you.
same here.
You look much younger today. What have you done?
Who, Michael?
Both of you.
It's the camera. We have a,
You need new
an age,
glasses, my friend.
we have age enhancing technology.
You did a good job. Good job.
So while everyone's coming in, we want to say some special words of Mazel Tov. We want to say Mazel Tov to Toby Halpern, and Jean, whose grandson up in the Boston area became bar mitzvah last week. Mazel Tov.
Mazel tov.
Toby and Jean.
And Toby, you're muted, so they can't hear you.
Can't see her either.
We can.
I'm
hear.
still selling.
Oh.
I also
And-
see Lori Dorman here.
Lori Dorman, this past Saturday at the Botanical Gardens up in Bradenton, her son Daniel, their eldest, became married. So mazel tov to Lori and Bruce.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it was beautiful, chilly, lovely, and the bride and groom were ecstatic. So that was wonderful. But thank you for the shout out.
Yeah.
And I don't, if there's any other good, well, actually, Michelle Wachowski, I think, Michelle, you're already unmuted. Can you tell us the good news that in your life?
I am in remission for a whole week now.
Oh, wonderful.
all right.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Mazel tov.
Yes.
And a lot of temple members helped me through the whole thing. It's been an amazing process, including the driver I'm looking at right now on the screen, Michael.
Michael.
Yeah.
We wish you the best. A good recovery and stay well.
Thank you very much.
When are you moving to your new house?
When the swimming pool is done, it'll be either March or April. We're fighting with people now.
Yeah.
I'm well
I
enough
hear
to
that-
start arguing again.
I hear there's a shortage of materials for building materials in the area.
There's a shortage of equipment to dig the holes for the pools right now.
Really?
Interesting.
Such a problem.
How can we live?
It's my
Right.
bathtub.
And we also want to share happy health news also to Mary. Mary, I'm going to see if I can unmute you. There you go.
You're unmuted.
Well, we already talked about this in my breakout group, and I feel like, I'm fine and I don't need to tell it all. I had a bad fall and then I had to have brain surgery to get rid of the hematoma, but I'm doing great now. So
Good.
thank you all for your great concern. I've really felt
Wonderful.
blessed to have the temple prayers.
And so, friends, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Michael Shafran. When we, as a committee, the Scholar in Residence Committee that Wendy and Larry Barnett chair, we decided because of the COVID, we were going to dream big, and so let's swing for the fences. And then Rabbi Shafran went big, 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 and nominated Rabbi Ed Feinstein. So this was his conception from the start, and we are very grateful to ask Rabbi Shafran to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Rabbi Glickman. Friends, I am so excited for you to meet my friend and my teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein. If I was to take the time to list everything in his bio, we would be here through the Saturday presentation. So I just want to share with you a couple highlights. He teaches at the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, meaning he teaches rabbis who are, students who are becoming rabbis. He works with the Wexner Heritage Program, which includes some of the smartest people in the Jewish world. The Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, one of the most inspirational places in the world, all places he teaches. Author of books, including one of my favorites, Tough Questions That Jews Ask. Now, if there's a book title that is a tough thing, he answers them. The tough questions that all of you asked, he answers them brilliantly. He's a mensch. He's a good man. He done so much in raising up the Jewish community in Dallas at the Solomon Schechter Academy that he helped found. Executive director of Camp Ramah in California. If you're looking for a rabbi who's done it all, who is fun, entertaining, and has some of the most deep Torah you've ever heard, it is my delight to share tonight with you a special presentation just for our Cornerstone Society. My friend, Nina's husband, the father of friends of mine, just an absolute mensch. I'm so excited to share with you Rabbi Ed Feinstein. Please, let's welcome him, friends.
Thank you, Michael. That's very sweet. Thanks so very much. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sharing this evening and this wonderful weekend together. And let me join with the rabbis in thanking you for your kind support of the synagogue, of the temple. As you know very well, this crisis is unprecedented, and particularly for those of us who work in community organizations like synagogues, we have no experience with this. You are the first Jews to ever be Jewish over Zoom. This I can tell you with quite some authority. And nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew if people would continue to belong to synagogues, would attend online, would participate. And the fact that we have done so very much through this crisis is quite remarkable. It's quite a statement about your community, about our community, and it's due to the ingenuity and creativity and love of your rabbis and the staff of the synagogue, and it's due in a very large part to your generosity and kindness. So thank you for sharing all of that with the temple, and thank you for being here tonight. I am a congregational rabbi, which means if you close your eyes and doze off, I'll feel right at home. So please feel free. And because it's COVID, I can tell you that you can sit back, you can have a snack, you can take off your shoes, you can unbuckle your pants. I've been watching this for the last 8-9 months for my synagogue, and we're all used to this. It's quite okay. This is what we do as a community now. This is how we give each other a hug. So I'm so glad to be with you and have a chance to do some serious learning on Shabbos and some storytelling tomorrow night. But tonight I want to give you just a gift. It's a small gift. It's a little dangerous, though. I have to tell you something. So we're going to do something very dangerous tonight. But I'm a professional. I can do this. Don't try this at home. I'm going to give you good news. Now, you're Jews. You don't want to hear good news. Every Jew wants to hear about an impending catastrophe, a disaster that's about to happen. It was the great Abba Eben who said the Jewish people, the only people in the world who simply refuse to take yes for an answer. Jewish Telegram says, start worrying, details will follow. That's who we are. We like to worry. And when some damn fool shows up and says, oh, I'm an optimist, we say, well, what do you know? You know, and I know that's how you're feeling. So just trust me, you deserve through all of this a little good news. You know, there's a really terrible joke that goes around. I apologize if you know this one already. It's about a guy who goes to see his dentist, and he's sitting in the waiting room, and he notices on the coffee table in the waiting room, there's a stack of magazines. And it's this vicious anti-Semitic rubbish from Farrakhan or somebody. And he's looking through this and he just can't believe that his dentist is reading such stuff. So it's his turn to go and sit in the chair. He says, can I ask you something? Why do you read all this anti-Semitic stuff? He says, I'll tell you the truth. I used to read the Jewish press. What do you read in the Jewish press? In the Jewish press, the Jews are disappearing. Israel is threatened. Jewish life is in trouble. It's not good for my heart. What do you read in the anti-Semitic press? The Jews own all the banks. The Jews control the television networks. The Jews have infiltrated the government. You want to know something? It's a lot nicer to read by them than to read by us. That's just because we like disasters. But you deserve to hear something better. You really do. First of all, let's start locally. Let's start with what we're doing now. The remarkable experience of COVID has forced synagogues, Jewish community centers, the whole Jewish world to find other ways to connect with people. And the connections have been quite remarkable. I have to tell you, quite remarkable. I don't know what happened in your synagogue. In our shul, we did high holidays entirely online. We really wanted to be together, but the county of Los Angeles is pretty strict about these things. Well, the wonderful thing was that I got letters from people, arguing with me, true, but most of them were kind of nice, but from all over the world. Somebody wrote to me from South Africa and from Australia and from New York, and families that had kids across the country in college sent the links to their kids. And you have what COVID has enabled us to do is erase geography and to be a worldwide Jewish community in ways that we never were before. And that's quite remarkable. And it's a testimony to what I want to tribute today. I want to talk about our creativity. I want to talk about the cultural resilience of the Jewish people and its genius for invention. Now let's step back just a minute and talk about our moment in history. You know that in all of Jewish history, the greatest moment of destruction was the destruction of the temple in the year 70 at the hands of the Romans. But you have to acknowledge that the Holocaust, with the destruction of all of European Jews, 6 million Jews, was an act that at least matches, if not exceeds, the horrors of the destruction of the temple. And then in all of Jewish history, the greatest act of redemption that we ever experienced was the Exodus from Egypt. And you have to acknowledge that the recreation of the state of Israel and all it's been able to do to rescue and save Jews around the world at least matches, if not exceeds, the Exodus from Egypt. Now, the difficulty is that the Exodus from Egypt and the destruction of the temple took place 1,500 years apart. But we have experienced the recreation of Israel and before it the Holocaust in one generation. How does a people make sense of that? How does a people experience that and find some bearings where we are in the world? And then the third piece of that, on top of that, is the remarkable experience of American diaspora. The American diaspora is like no diaspora we've ever lived in before, ever, just ever, because no diaspora has welcomed us with the same open arms and open promise of security that America has. I mean, I am very acutely aware that I am literally the first generation in the in Jewish diaspora history in 1,800 years not to fear a knock at the door in the middle of the night. Now, I'm aware of that because I have immigrant grandparents and parents who grew up as first generation Americans and who always felt somewhat out of place in America, always felt that America was a tentative and tenuous place. And the fact that we feel so comfortable and that we feel so much a part of this. Look, what's the best evidence of this? The inauguration of the President of the United States, yet just what, yesterday? And the vice president is married to a Jew and has Jewish grandchildren. And the president, all three of his kids have married Jews. And the previous president, his kids have married Jews. And he had great. So Joseph R. Biden Jr. has Jewish grandchildren. Donald J. Trump has Jewish grandchildren. Clinton is married to a Jew. Gore's kids married Jews. I mean, and this is what it's an indication of how we have found a place here and how America has opened itself to us in a way that no diaspora ever did before. The question is, how do we live in that way? How do you live under those conditions? What does that conditions call upon us to do? Now, here we're going to go one more step. You ready? So the Holocaust and the state of Israel and the American diaspora fall into a much larger picture of a great crisis in Jewish history that we're dealing with. And it's called the Crisis of Modernity. We are trying to deal with how to be Jewish under a set of sociological and political and cultural conditions that are brand new to the Jewish people. And we haven't yet figured it out, but the creativity that has been brought to figure it out is simply remarkable. And that's what I want to celebrate today. So here's a little bit of history. When we tell the story of the Jewish people, we love to tell the story of Jewish continuity. We love to see ourselves as part of an unbroken chain of tradition that stretches all the way back into antiquity. We look back at our ancestors, at Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and Leah and Moses and Aaron and David and Solomon and Isaiah and Jeremiah. We look back to the great rabbis of Hillel and Rabbi Akiva. We look back to the great scholars of the Rashi and the Rambam. We look back at the Baal Shem Tov. We look back at generations and generations and generation of history, and we see a continuity. And we see a continuity, and we're proud of that. We're proud of that continuity. That's what gives us a sense of identity. Now, that comes with a certain amount of anxiety. The anxiety is, will my kids carry on Jewish life with the same seriousness and the same devotion that my ancestors carried on? And that, by the way, has been an anxiety that's attended every generation of Jews since Abraham. We're not the first generation to say, oi, the kids don't want to come to shul. We're not the first generation. This is part of who we are. But now here's the other side of the story, the part that I think makes it even more interesting. There is another story, a counter story, or sort of rather a contrapuntal story, a harmonious story of Jewish discontinuity, which is to say that at certain moments in our history, events from outside or events from inside necessitated a reconsideration of the whole Jewish project, a reinterpretation of Jewish ideas, a restatement of Jewish values, a reinvention of Jewish institutions. At these moments of crisis, leaders of our people were wise enough to recognize that we couldn't go on doing things that we did before, that tradition wasn't what was called for. Instead, invention, creativity, reinterpretation, renewal, what was called for. In fact, they recognized that if we had gone on doing what we were doing before, we would die as a people. I mean, very simply, what got us here ain't going to get us there. That it was time to shift, to turn, to use Jewish forms in a new way, to interpret Jewish values in a new way, to express Jewish identity in a new way, to find a new meaning for Jewish existence. That takes tremendous creativity, tremendous ingenuity, and lots of wisdom, because you got to figure out what to change and what not to change, and how to change it, and how to preserve a sense of coherence during a moment of change. These moments of crisis have called upon us to really find the very best within us. And my thesis is that we are living through one of the greatest moments of crisis in all of Jewish history. In the big picture, the crisis of modernity, and in the more local picture, the question of how do you live in an age post-Holocaust with the state of Israel in all the freedom that America offers us. How do you recreate Jewish life? Well, there is a text that can help us. And it's something that you never thought about. It's not a text from the Talmud and not a text from the Bible. No, it's a text you all know. It is, in fact, Fiddler on the Roof. Now, Fiddler on the Roof opened on Broadway in 1964, and it was based on a set of stories of Tevye and his daughters, authored by the great Yiddish writer Shalom Aleichem. And everybody loves it because it's a story of tradition, right? And that's how the play begins. Tevye stands in the middle of the stage and he says to us, a fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, no? But in our little village of Anatevka, you might say that every one of us is a fiddler on the roof, trying to scratch out a little tune. Why do we stay up there if it's so dangerous? Because Anatevka's our home. And how do we keep our balance? Now I'm going to ask you a favor here. I need you to sing out loud, but stay muted, because Zoom is not good with music. But wherever you are, if you're in your living room or your bedroom or your office, I want you to build it out with me. You ready? That I can tell you in one word. What's the word? Tradition. And that begins the first great song of the show. So let's sing together. Ready? Tradition. Tradition. I don't have an orchestra here, so you'll forgive me. Bum, ba-rum, bum, bum, ba-rum, bum, bum. Tradition. 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 Now I need all the gentlemen, I want you to sing with me. Ready? Who day and night must scramble for a living, feed a wife and children, say his daily prayers, and who has the right as master of the house to have the final word at home. The papa, tradition. I want to hear Rabbi Shefrin do this. So we're going to ask Rabbi Shefrin to unmute, and he's going to
The
sing.
Papa! The Papa! Tradition!
The Papa, tradition. Bum, 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 bum. Now, ladies, I need you to help me. Ready? All the women ready? Who must know the way to make a proper home, a quiet home, a kosher home? Who must raise a family and run the home so Papa's free to read the holy books? Together, the mama, tradition. La mama, tradition. Bum, 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 bum. All right, back to the gentlemen. Ready? Gentlemen, you're going to help me with the next verse. At 3, I started Hebrew school. At 10, I learned a trade. I hear they picked a bride for me. I hope she's pretty. The sun, tradition. The sun, tradition. Bum, 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 bum. Ladies, I need you to help me. Ready? And who does mama teach to mend and tend and fix, preparing me to marry whoever Papa picks? The daughter, tradition. The daughter, tradition. Bum, 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 bum. Now, if we were really clever, we'd sing it as a round, but that's really hard to do on Zoom. But thank you for singing. I saw you were singing, and that makes me feel very warm and good inside. The story starts out with tradition. And what does the song tell us? Well, it tells us what life is like in a pre-modern society, the world of our great-grandparents. And what was life like? Life was governed by tradition. That is to say, that everything that happened in your life was pre-scripted before you were born. Everything was decided for you before you were born. And not only was it decided for you, but you had a deep sense of meaning and significance because everybody knew who he was and what God expected him to do. If you were a son, you knew what to do. If a daughter, a mother, a father, you knew what your role was. All of your decisions were made, including the most intimate of decisions. Who were you going to marry? Which is the next drama. Tevye has 5 daughters, Gewalt, right? And because Tevye, remember, in that world, what made a girl attractive were 3 things, right? Number 1, she was related to a great scholar. She had yichus. Okay, I'm sorry, my daughter's married. I can't talk business with you. Number 2, Rabbi Glickman, you have daughters? Rabbi Shefman, you have daughters? They married? All right, because we could do some business here, you know? Number two, if the woman, if she had money, if there was money in the family, right? Every girl is beautiful, but the girl with 1,000 shares of Microsoft is positively ravishing. And number 3, if she was pretty. So Tevye's girls were poor. Tevye was not related to anybody great rabbi. And Tevye's girls they had wonderful personalities, right? And so here's the thing. How do you get married? So into the homestead comes Yenta the matchmaker, which is very funny because the word Yenta means a gossip. And who knows better gossip than the matchmaker? And says to Tevye and his wife Goldie, for your oldest daughter, I have a match. It's a wonderful match. It's the butcher Laser Wolf. Now the butcher Laser Wolf is Tevye's age. And the butcher, he's a widower. And he's old. And he's grumpy. And he's drunk. And he's violent, and he's crude. So he's a wonderful man for your daughter. What gives him any kind of possibility? He has money. And in a society where you can literally starve to death, you'll never starve being the butcher's wife. And so Tevye is very happy about this. He goes off to the local tavern and he ties one on and he sings to life, l'chaim, Nostrovia, and he drinks and he comes home back to the homestead. And as he enters his homestead, there's his daughter Tzeitel standing at the gate. And he's so happy, he wraps his arms around her and says, my Tzeitel, you're going to be married. I'm the happiest man in the world. And she says, Papa, I am so grateful for what you've done for me. But I refuse the match. A girl could do this, but it never happened. But it happened in Tevye's day. She refused. And he says, you refuse the match? And suddenly he's very sober. And he says, why? She says, because I'm going to marry somebody else. And he says, really? And who are you going to marry? And she says, I'm going to marry Muttel Kemzoil. Now, who is Muttel Kemzoil? He's the skinny, unaccomplished, starving orphan who Tevye took in as a boy and raised, and he's now a tailor. He's a starving tailor. And Tevye asks his daughter a very important spiritual question. You could marry a rich man like Razor Wolf, and instead you want to marry a poor, unaccomplished, starving tailor like Muttel Chemsoil? For God's sakes, why? And she answers with words that will change all of Jewish history. She says, Papa, you know what she says? I love him. Now, I want you to understand something. Everybody loves Fiddler on the Roof because it's a story about tradition, but it's not. It's really a story about how tradition faded away, how it was undermined, the revolution that took tradition from us. And that is called modernity. And it comes in 3 steps. Step 1, tradition told you who you were and what God expected you to do. But modernity comes and says, you can choose your own life. The choosing self is the first statement of modernity. And romantic love, that I marry who I love, not who my papa chooses for me, is the first symbol of romantic love. Look, in the old country, you were born, lived your whole life, and died in a circle no bigger than 100 miles. In the old country, if your father was a tailor, you were a tailor. If your father was a butcher, you were a butcher. If your father drove a cart, you drove a cart, unless you were a woman, of course, in which case you were going to be a wife and a mother, no matter what your aptitudes were. You come to America, you come to modernity. America is this capital of modernity. And what happens? You make your own choices. We live in a circle that we draw. You choose, you pull your own strings. And in America, if your father's a tailor, you become a lawyer. If your father's a butcher, you become a doctor. And if your father's a doctor, you can be an actor, or a poet, because in America, you write your own script. This is modernity. Now, think about what that does to Jewish life. It means that Jewish life is now voluntary. I mean, there once was a time that whatever your parents were, you were. You were born Jewish. You were born a Republican or a Democrat. You were born in a certain place. You stayed there. But that's not true anymore. Today, we send our kids off to college. And college washes them clean. Universities wash them clean of all the things we taught them. I don't know how many of you had kids or grandkids who went off to college. It's a hell of an experience. You send your daughter, your son off to college. They come back for Thanksgiving. They sit at the table. They have green hair. They have schmitchiks in the nose. The kid says, no, I don't want to eat this. I'm a vegan and a Buddhist. And I've changed my name. I've taken back my Native American name. My name is not Shoshana. My name is not Yonkel. My name is not Joshua. My name is not Jennifer. My name is White Feather, Verves. The joke is, Papa, I chose a Jewish name, White Fish, So, but you see, it's just a symbol of America gives us choices, which means that if you're Jewish today, it's not because your parents were Jewish. It's because you chose to be Jewish. And I want you to look at these two wonderfully heroic men, your 2 rabbis here. And I want you to understand the heroic work that they're doing. Because it's not like it was when we were young, when people came to a community and just joined the temple. It's not like it was once upon a time when you had to be Jewish. There was no choice. These men go into the world and they ask, they invite, they entice, they seduce, they convince, they persuade. That's a whole different kind of Jewish life than we ever had before. That's a whole different kind of Jewish life than we ever had before. And the forms of Jewishness are very different than they were before. Because in America, you can make choices that were unheard of. You can choose to live with somebody who's not Jewish. And then the question is, what kind of household will you have? And can we teach couples? I have a wonderful story in my own family. My nephew, who never wanted much to do with Jewishness, never did. It just wasn't his thing. He had a bar mitzvah, and that was the last time the Jewish people ever had any connection with him. And then he went and married a beautiful Thai girl. Her parents immigrated from Thailand. They owned a Thai restaurant here in Los Angeles. He lives on the East Coast. And he married this Thai girl, and she started hanging out with us, with my wife and me and with my in-laws. So when they moved to the East Coast, she calls us and she says, Uncle Eddie, can I ask you a question? do you have a recipe for challah? I say, yeah, why? She says, I want to make challah. They have 2 daughters. And she said, the kids go to nursery school. We sent them to the Jewish nursery school. And the kids want to make challah. And I know you bake, so could you send me a recipe for challah? So I send my Thai niece a recipe for challah, and she starts baking challah. And guess what? When she starts baking challah, she said to my nephew, if I have to bake challah, you have to make kiddush. And she lights candles. And now they do a Shabbos table. Now, by any halachic, by any traditional definition, she's not Jewish, but she's living a Jewish life. She's bringing Jewish forms into her home. The challah led to Shabbos candles, which led to Kiddush, and to Friday night dinner. And Friday night dinner led to Hanukkah, and Hanukkah led to Purim, and Purim led to Pesach, and you know the rest of the story. And that's what I mean. That's Seidel's gift to us. Now we teach Judaism of choice. And that's the revolution of Judaism. There's 2 more daughters, so don't go away. The second daughter was Huddle. Remember Huddle? So remember what happens in the story? Go back to the play, back to the movie, right? Seidel and Muttel get married, and in the middle of the Huddle has a boyfriend. His name is Perchik. He was a revolutionary. He's running away from the Tsar's police. He's hiding out in Tevia's house. And so what happens at the wedding? He crosses the mechitza, and he asks Huddle to marry, to dance. To dance. Can you imagine this? Boys and girls dancing together? Gewalt. And then they decide to run away together. He's going to Siberia to hide away from the Tsar's armies. She'll go with him. Now, what do they represent? Jews always believed that we were bystanders in history. History is God's story. We're just waiting for God to send a Messiah. But in the beginning of the 20th century, Jews changed their minds, and Huddle and Perchik represent that change. They said, we will take into our hands the power to affect the conditions of our own life. Some became Bolsheviks like Perchik, or communists or socialists. Some became capitalists here in America. The most powerful example of Huddle and Perchik was Zionism. Now, it's hard to remember that Zionism was a revolt against traditional Judaism. Traditional Judaism says, still stay where you are. Don't come to Israel. Wait, God will redeem you. But no, the Zionists said, enough waiting. We will create the conditions of our own existence. And that's the miracle of the state of Israel. But it was a revolt against tradition. And it gave us a state of Israel. And it gave us a sense of responsibility for creating the conditions of our own existence. And that's the second moment of modernity. And the question of Israel, it's a question that all of us wrestle with, all of us who love Israel, is what kind of country shall Israel be to reflect the best of the Jewish people? I mean, can you imagine this? For 1800 years, we're being chased all over the world. And finally, we get a country of our own. But because God has a wicked sense of humor, where does he put it? He puts it in the worst neighborhood in the world. And Jewish kids have to serve in an army to protect their parents. And Jewish kids have to serve on the West Bank to protect from terrorists. And Jewish kids have to figure out, how do you negotiate power? This is the great dilemma. I got to tell you, I went to Maui. Anyone ever been to Maui? Don't go. It'll make you an atheist. I'll tell you why. I climbed Maui Mountain with my wife, and I stood on the top of Maui Mountain, and you look at this beautiful island with gorgeous blue sea, and the girls in the skirts and the hula dancing, and the boys with the, and I said, Rebbeinu Shalom, master of the world, you knew about this place? And you put us where? I mean, come on. It would have been so hard. It took us 40 years. You could have put us here. You could have put us here. Right, exactly. There could have been Oahu, Kauai, Honolulu, Maui, and a Jewish island called Alavai. And we would have worn skirts, and we would have had luau's, and and no one would have bothered us. And you put us in this place in the world where we have to fret and fear every day, first of all, for the enemies who want to kill us, and then for the question of, how do I use power with ethics, which is a very difficult question. It's the great dilemma that Perchik and Huddle gave us. But I got to tell you something. As much of a dilemma as that is, just like the other dilemma of how do I get Jews to choose Judaism, this is a dilemma I like. You know, I had a Zayda, and my Zayda used to say, oh, the world's full of tsuris. You know what that means? The world's full of problems. And I said, yeah, Zayda, it's full of tsuris. He says, yeah, but I got to tell you something, my Zayda used to say. It's better tsuris than we had yesterday. You don't get to live without problems, but you can live with better problems. And the problem of Israel is how to make Israel reflect the best of our people and the best of our culture. And the problem of America is how do we get Jews to choose to live Jewish lives? And then the third daughter, and we'll finish with this part, I promise you, because you've had enough listening to rabbis. The third problem, only me, not these guys, is remember Hava? She was the little girl with the book in front of her nose all the time, and she wandered in the library and she met a little Russian boy named Fietka, and they fell in love. And that was a forbidden relationship. Now, what does that mean? She represents the opening of Jewish culture. Up until that point, we only spoke to ourselves. And you know, if you're only speaking to yourselves, you can say all sorts of things that you can't say out in public. But once you open Jewish life to science, to philosophy, to literature, to psychology, to archaeology, to all of the disciplines of modern knowledge, you then have to think differently. And once you open the Jewish people to intercourse, to connection, to friendships with people outside, right? I remember my parents used to scream at me that I wasn't allowed to date non-Jews. And I said, Mom, it's not a date. She's my lab partner in chemistry. She's a wonderful girl. Okay, she's from a Catholic family, but she's my friend. And my parents didn't know how to deal with this. And that's what we did. We discovered that, you know, that the non-Jews are like really nice people, right? And they don't want to kill us. That's the funny thing. Yes, there's anti-Semitism, but the bigger problem that threatens American Jews is not that people want to kill us. It's they want to kiss us. It's they want to marry us. That's the bigger problem. And how do you live in a pluralistic society in which you're accepted everywhere? And the boundaries that used to bind Jewish life in don't bind it anymore. And the things that we say about ourselves don't hold fast anymore, because now they must be compared to what everybody else is saying. The openness, the cognitive openness of Jewish culture. This is one of the problems. So now we live in a time of modernity. And we face these problems which we never faced before. The problem of choice, the problem of power, and the problem of openness. And how do we deal with that? And here I want to give you good news. And I know you don't want to hear it because you want to hear about problems. And boy, could I tell you about problems. Hell, I'm an ordained rabbi. I can make you cry. I could give you statistics that will curl your hair. But that's not the point. First of all, that narrative doesn't help us at all. But the real question is, why are we still here? We've been dealing with this now for 3, 4, 5 generations. Why are we still here? Let me tell you one little thing. Interesting story. In 1964, April 1964, Look magazine, which at the time was the second most popular news magazine in all of North America. In April 1964, Look magazine published an article called The Vanishing American Jew. Was written by senior editor Thomas Newman, who gathered up all of the studies of Jewish populations and all of the sociology. And he said, with rising rates of intermarriage, falling rates of affiliation, lots of disaffection among young Jews, American Jewish life is going to disappear. There'll be very few Jews left by 1980. And by the turn of the millennium, by the year 2000, there'll be practically no Jews in North America. This is what he said. Now, here's what's odd. Look magazine is gone, and we're still here. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? And the answer is that to meet these challenges of choice and power and openness, we have found what we found in all the other generations of Jewish existence and all the other moments of crisis in Jewish history: remarkable creativity, remarkable resilience, remarkable leadership, remarkable ways of reinterpreting and reinventing Jewish life. And that's good news that you need to celebrate. That you need to celebrate. Look, I dare say that your temple, if your great grandfather walked into your temple, he wouldn't recognize it. That if your great grandfather saw these two rabbis, I'm not sure that he'd recognize them as rabbis, or me either, by the way. I have a little bit of a beard, but not the kind of beard your great grandfather had. But you know, that's the point. The point isn't to do what our great grandparents did. The point is to take the values, the truths that our great grandparents lived for and died for, and to create a new form so that this generation can adopt it and choose it and cherish it and enjoy it. So I have a nursery school in my shul. Maybe you have one. Rabbi Glickman just said you have a nursery school. So in my nursery school, so here's the story of my nursery school. You ready? So I want you to think 5 generations. We now have kids who are 6th generation American Jews. Can you imagine that? So Avram, Chaim, and Sura Fega came to America at the end of the 19th century, and they settled, I don't know, Lower East Side. And their children, Morris and Muriel, moved out to Brooklyn. And then Morris and Muriel drove the station wagon out to California or down to Florida, and they raised their kids, Stephen and Nancy. And Steve and Nancy found a nice suburban neighborhood where they raised Jennifer and Joshua. And Jennifer and Joshua went to the University of Florida, made a nice life, stayed in the area, and they raised Brett and Jennifer. They raised Brett and Brittany. And you know what's going to happen? You know what just happened? Brett and Brittany just brought their kids to the nursery school at Temple Emanu-El. And you know what those kids are? Avram, Chaim, and Sura Fega. And that's the great story of Jewish life. So tonight, I want to give you the good news that the Jewish world, that the Jewish people lives, Am Yisrael Chai, and it lives not because we kept doing the same things, but because we had the ingenuity, the creativity, the wisdom, and the spirit to find a new way to express Judaism in each and every generation. And if there are things that you and I love that are going to go by the wayside, you know, I know, remember what it was like in the shul of my youth when they had a new cantor came and changed the melody to Adon Olam, and there was always a riot in the shul. But that's what has to happen. The old words sung to new melodies, the old ways presented in new ways, the old truths presented in new forms. That's what Jewish life is all about. And I look forward to sharing this with you over the course of the weekend. Well, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you, Rabbi Feinstein. Oh my goodness, friends. When we thought we were just getting a taste of our scholar, we got a whole meal, like plated. And wow, that was just fantastic. Thank you for taking us on that journey of Torah. Loved it. I can't wait to hear more in your sermon tomorrow night and on Saturday morning at 11 via Zoom, friends. Personally, I'm just so thrilled that you've been nothing but kind to myself and my mother over all these years. And I'm so grateful you talked about the kids who don't want to go to shul and got dragged there anyway. I'm so glad that all those years ago, my mom dragged me to Valley Beth Shalom in Encino, where you serve still to this day. It was a formative time in my life, and I'm so grateful. I know there's people on this Zoom whose parents got married there, and there's people who've been, and you don't have to go this weekend. You could stay right in your homes here in Sarasota and learn and enjoy from Rabbi Ed Feinstein. So friends, once again, put your hands together, please. Say thank you. Say Todah Rabah, Rabbi. What a treat to learn from you. I also want to take a moment to just once again thank Arn and Dee Kaplan for their kindness and generosity in making sure that we are afforded the opportunity to learn from fantastic scholars like Rabbi Feinstein. And friends, this doesn't have to conclude our night. You are welcome to hang out for the after party. Rabbi Feinstein, I don't know if you have to go or if you can stay for a few minutes just to hang out, but you're welcome to. I'm going to end the spotlights and just please remind everybody that tomorrow night, 7:15, come to shul. The sermon's going to be great, I promise. And then Saturday morning at 11, Shabbat morning, please come and join us via Zoom. If you need the link, be in touch with me or Rabbi Glickman. Hopefully you've signed up on the temple website. Be safe, be healthy. We love you, we miss you. And please, friends, stick around for the after party unless you have to be somewhere.
So Michael, is the rabbi still here? I